Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today's story is about standing your ground when family boundaries are crossed. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. I deserve to live in a house that you bought because I made 3 kids. I'm a 32-year-old woman and I just bought my first house. It has 3 bedrooms, a yard, and is just what I need right now. I'm single and have 2 dogs and a cat. My sister's 34, has 3 children, and lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. Lately, she's been talking about how such a tiny living space is not enough for the 4 of them. When she got to know about the house I'd bought, she became very upset and told me I was being wasteful as I'm single and don't have kids and therefore don't need such a big space. I reminded her that what I do with my hard-earned money is none of her business. She went on to complain to our mother about how selfish I was being. Yesterday evening, I got a call from my mom telling me I should let my sister and her kids move into the house. My house. I told her that no one was going to live in the house that I paid for but me, and that extra space would be great for my dogs to play in. My mom also got very upset with me and told me I was being unreasonable, that my sister's kids are growing and need the space more than my dogs. I offered to help my sister out financially so she could rent a bigger place. My mom got my sister on the phone, who shot down the idea, telling me I needed to let her and her kids live in my house. When I refused again, she very generously suggested a compromise. I could live in the house with her and her kids would not have to find somewhere else to live. She said this as if she was doing me a favor. I told her she'd lost her mind and hung up. Wait, she seriously thought that you would give your house to her and that you would live somewhere else? What the hell? And our second story. The cop said I had to, so I did exactly that. For context, I used to work as an impound driver in my city. We were the bad guys and always got angry folks getting their vehicles back, but this one was personally my favorite release I did. One of my coworkers towed an old Ford minivan from the late 90s that was parked in a strip mall's parking lot for being a non-customer. So he brought it to our nearest impound lots. Around a week later, I was assigned to release the car back to the owner at a scheduled time. We give people a grace period of 30 minutes after their appointment to compensate for traffic and arranging themselves transportation to the impound yards. That being said, him and his girlfriend were late and missed his appointment well after the grace period. Turns out he was out of town for the week to visit friends. I decided to be nice and release the car to them since they had trouble getting here. Boy, were the couple not nice at all, screaming at me and throwing insults left and right. Anyway, I asked for their information. He refused to hand it over because he said that I would steal his info and sell it. I don't know how he came up with that, but whatever. I told him that we don't do that, and it's for the paperwork in order to release the car. He made threats to me and said that he would ram my work truck out of the way with his van. I drive a Ford F-450 with a wrecker on the back. There was no way he'd be able to. We went back and forth for a good 10 minutes, saying I couldn't release his car without it and would have to leave and reschedule for a later time. He said, then I'll just stay here then until you give me my crap, and proceeded to call the police. They arrive after some time, and it's well past my shift, and I wanted to go home. The officer gets both of our side of the story and ended up saying, just release the car, dude. Tired and wanting to go home, I said, fine, but it goes against policy, and he'd be charged for the time wasted, which was about an hour at this point. The officer was satisfied with that answer and told the angry owner, still angry, he yelled out to me, and I want the exact price of what I owe, not a penny more. I agree to his terms and start doing the math for the bill. Little did he know we charge people $22 every minute past appointment if they've not paid. It's predatory, but it was listed on our price list in the glass countertop. The tow was originally going to be around $440, tow fee, appointment fee, and storage fee every day. It ended up being almost $520. He was livid at the price. The officer's eyebrows raised and was slack-jawed, and I was internally smug. I broke down the costs and charges bit by bit. He threw a tantrum as the officer told him, "You did say you wanted the exact price, sir." After he angrily paid for his bill, a late-night coworker showed up and I filled him in on what happened. He told me to just head home and he'll take care of the rest. I started to drive home and I get a call from that coworker and I can hear her screaming in the background from the van owner. He told me what happened immediately after I left. Turns out the gentleman who left his van at that strip mall had his catalytic converter stolen and fuel siphoned, so he couldn't drive it home and needed another tow to get it home. I burst out laughing as hard as I could. It was a very well-paid day. Knowing how predatory tow companies are, I'm not sure why people think yelling at them is going to make their situation better. And our next story. The time I got mistaken for a bouncer. I moved out really soon after turning 18. Not because I hate my parents, I love them, but they raised 4 kids, so they deserve some quiet time at home. I moved from the country to a big city. At first, it was a cultural shock, but I arranged me with it. A friend of mine working as security guard bouncer, he worked at a club in town. It wasn't a total high society thing, but it wasn't all crappy neither. One night, my then roommate dragged me partying. I'm not really into clubbing, but what the heck. I went out to have a smoke and to call someone. Smoking wasn't allowed inside. My bouncer buddy saw me, and then I chilled with him, smoking a cigarette and having a chat. He then went away to take a piss, so I lit my second cigarette and tried to make my call. I was approached by what seemed to be a mother-daughter duo, or maybe aunt and niece. I don't know. But the girl was maybe like 18 or 19, and the woman was in her early to mid-40s. Both were clothed, very trashy, and especially the older woman screamed midlife crisis. Middle crisis woman, MCW. Hey, excuse me, she waves to get my attention. Me, huh? I slipped my phone in my pocket and took a drag at my cigarette. MCW. So we waited at least half an hour. No crap, we were waiting 45 minutes. Me. So? I put my cigarette out. MCW. So maybe you could bring us in? No, I got it. She mistook me for a bouncer. Okay, the bouncers were in black jackets with security written in big white reflecting letters on the back of the jacket and in little on the right side of the chest. And they had one of those earplugs for a radio in their ear so they can be called if they're needed inside. I was in a black bomber jacket, an AC/DC shirt, black pants, and a pair of combat boots. Me. I think there's a misunderstanding. MCW. Oh, no, there isn't. Sure, you can't let us skip the line, but what if you just looked the other way? MCW. Oh, no, there isn't. Sure, you can't let us skip the line, but what if you just looked the other way? She started touching my jacket, and I guess she tried to be flirty. Sorry, trashy MILFs aren't my prey. And we slip in. We just wanted to do clubbing, and I bet you need some ladies in there. She then slipped a banknote in my pocket. Trashy teen, TT. Look, clubs need some girls, so guys buy drinks, right? Me. Sorry, I'm not working here. MCW. Oh, come on. I know a bouncer when I see one. I'm long enough in the clubbing scene. I know you're afraid what your boss maybe will say, kid. I was 21? Yeah. She proceeds to touch me and the flirty thing, but I know him. It's Frank, right? He's a friend of me. Tell him MCW slipped in. Now my buddy came back from the toilet, raised an eyebrow when he saw me. TT looks at my buddy and her eyes widened. My buddy weared the security jacket, weared black leather gloves, and had a plug in his ear and an ID card hanging around his neck. TT then whispered in MCW's ear. She's looking at my buddy and gets red in the face. Both then retreated to the back of line. He asked me what happened, and I told him, and we laughed. I pulled the banknote out of my pocket, and this woman gave me €100. I went back in the club and bought me and my friends some beers. Thanks for the beers. And my groceries the next day. And our last story. Neighbors tried to steal part of our backyard and front yard. My family's lived in this gated community for years, long before most of the houses around us were even built. Back then, the area was just open fields and forests, and our house stood out with its huge yard that my mom transformed into a lush, jungle-like space. It's a beautiful oasis with trees and plants stretching down a hill into our backyard, and we've enjoyed every bit of it. On the left side of the hill, we have great neighbors with whom we've never had any issues, but on the right side, things have been a nightmare ever since a new family moved in. Their house sits higher up the hill, and their backyard directly faces ours, separated by a fence and a now unused horse trailer that marks the property line. The previous owners of their house had basically paved over their entire backyard, turning it into a giant concrete driveway with barely any space for plants. We had a property assessment done years ago with those old neighbors to clearly mark where our yard began and theirs ended. The assessors confirmed with documentation to back it up that everything past the driveway belonged to us. When those neighbors eventually moved, the new family took over and brought trouble with them. Right from the start, the new family complained about our trees. They said the trees were blocking their view and even went so far as to try and cut them down without our permission. They claimed the trees were on their property, even though we had proof showing that thanks to the previous owners paving everything over, they legally didn't even have a backyard to begin with. Over the years, we had let the trees grow tall to block their house from view because their yard was always filled with junk and clutter. It wasn't something we wanted to look at, let alone have guests see when they came over, but these new neighbors just couldn't accept that those trees and the land they were on were ours. Despite our efforts, they've made several attempts to chop them down, but we've stopped them every single time. Whenever we hear the buzz of saws, we're on high alert, making sure they're only trimming what little land they actually own. Then a few months ago, things escalated. I was out in the backyard when I noticed something that made my blood boil. A fence being built halfway down the hill, creeping into our land. Not only did this fence snake through the backyard, but it extended to the front yard right up to the street. It was now blocking off access to some of our trees that were clearly on our side of the property line. I immediately told my parents, and they were furious. The neighbors hadn't mentioned a thing about building a fence, and they were clearly overstepping their bounds. We tried to confront them, but they refused to speak to us, so we took our complaint to the community management, but that didn't get us anywhere either. Update. We decided enough was enough and called our lawyer for some guidance. After documenting everything, years of disputes, photos of the fence encroaching on our land, and all the legal property lines, we sued the neighbors in civil court. They thought they could get away with ignoring us, but the court ruled in our favor. Now they have to tear down the illegal fence, also had to pay for the damages and legal fees. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.